Hey, what is up YouTube? Pat here with another video. This time we're going to be talking about the ARG Regional that just happened this past weekend. Um, Obviously we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to use a webcam this time. But before we get into what actually happened during the weekend, I just want to thank you guys all for the support you guys have given me. We broke 100 subscribers over this weekend. I attribute that largely to Scott and Matt, which I'll get to talking to them in a second. But at some point in the near future, I'm going to do a 100 subscriber contest. Maybe we'll do as 150. I mean, it'll be a little bit late, but it is what it is. I definitely want to give back to you guys for all the love you guys have shown me. So many of you guys over the weekend came up to me, talked to me, shook my hand, and I was very flattered by some of the things I heard from you guys. Some of you guys, the fact that you even knew who I was, because I feel like I'm just some, somewhat older player from New Jersey that just, doesn't really do much. But so yeah, just thank you so much for everything that was said. So getting into the weekend, Friday night, I had already been staying at my friend Anthony's place from the previous night. We met up with Scott Dashy, had Bear's Barbecue, which is still absolutely amazing food. Scott's somebody I've known for probably close to 10 years at this point, and it's always a pleasure to hang out with him. He's nothing like his online persona. He's like an e-thug online, but he is a sweetheart in real life. I know that's probably a phrase he's probably going to be like, what the hell, you just use that to describe me? But yeah. And going on from that, I met up with Matt Coombs. I finally get to meet the infamous Scrubmania 3xG god, or whatever you want to call him, and I got to actually film the match between Scott and Matt, which was wildly entertaining. I highly suggest you guys go and watch that video. What I learned from meeting Matt is that he and I are the same person, and that instantly made him probably my favorite person I met all weekend. He's basically me, only he can actually grow facial hair, and he, likes hats, whereas I hate hats. I absolutely despise them. But for the most part, he and I are the same person. We had a lot of the same ideas. He had some spicy tech that I was not aware of, and I showed him some stuff, or told him about some stuff that he may not have thought of. The blue-yellow Big Getty Star Trunks deck, for example. Now moving on to the actual event itself. Saturday's event, I should say. First off, I have to, state the obvious. Thank you, Jim, and everyone at Alter Reality Games for the absolute wonderful event. It was among the best card tournaments I've ever been to. Everything was ran incredibly smoothly. Everything was handled very professionally. If I had to have any gripe at all with the event, it is that food, it was a serious issue with that event. The venue does not allow for outside food and drink. Obviously there were water containers for us to get water, but food became a serious issue, and I had heard it from a lot of players on the floor. Since the format was best of 3, I'm not going to turn this into a best of 3 versus best of 1 video, but since it was best of 3 in a lot of matches, we're close to time, we're going to time, and we immediately moved right on to the next round, and there was no lunch break. Many people went pretty much the entire day without any food. I know I personally went for I had breakfast around like 8:15 or 8:30. I did not eat anything or consume anything other than water until 10:15 p.m. So going forward, that is something I would like to see addressed. It was an incredibly grueling and taxing experience, and I know some players actually ended up feeling very sick by the end of the event. But otherwise, aside from that, absolutely amazing event. Thank you once again, Jim, and everyone at ARG. I cannot thank you guys enough for what you guys have done for the game. So for the actual event, I ran Tricolor Ginyu. No real surprise there. I've been running it for like 3.5, 4 months at this point. So it's basically old reliable. My list, I'm not really going to post my list because it's still kind of changing even now. A deck is like a living, breathing thing to me. It just evolves and changes all the time to reflect and counter what everybody else is playing in the current metagame. If you want an idea of what I ran, though, it's very similar to the list that Matt Coombs had posted a couple days ago, although my build did play Beerus. And instead of playing the Father-Son Kamehamehas, I played main deck Sun Goten Family of Justice because it hard counters the mirror, and I expected to play against a lot of Ginyu. That wasn't so much the case, but yeah. So moving on to just going to highlight a couple of the matches from the actual event. First up, shoutouts to Ben from Torrington. He won the Set 2 release tournament, I believe, with the deck he played me against, which is in my opinion, was my worst matchup going into the tournament, which was Ginyu Force Ginyu. Game 1, he just comboed out, turn 3 or turn 4, completely wiped the floor with me. Game 2, I sided to the adjustments because I was on the play. I was able to, hit those cards early enough and shut him down. Game 3, he's obviously on the play. I didn't have Cold Bloodlust in hand. He turn 3 drops Ginyu Reliable Captain, and then turn 4 or 5. No, actually, it was turn 6. Turn 6, he drops Ginyu on top of his 3-drop Ginyu, and I Bloodlust it, obviously, because I know it's game if I don't, and he Battering Lasers it. And I barely almost stave it off, but I'm 5k short, so end up the day 0-1. So big props to him for playing the matchup correctly, for, again, mainboarding Battering Laser. That is a super slept on deck. I said it in my yellow deck video, or leaders video, I should say. It is, in my opinion, still a tier 1 deck. One of the strongest decks you can possibly be playing in this format, and it is incredibly strong against the slower decks. So yeah. Also, shout out to Josh. He was one of the judges there. It is actually his build. He also has a Gold Frieza build that is really spicy as well. So yeah, shoutouts to Ben and Josh. Great job. Next up, I want to talk about Amir from New York. He and I had played in the top 8 for the state championship tournament previously. He was a little bit under the weather then, so I was really happy to get a rematch against him, and I applaud him for playing Vegito in a format that was largely Cell, Vegeta, and Ginyu. So yeah, just again, props to him for sticking to his guns. It was a really close game. Obviously, Bloodlust was the biggest deciding factor because certain cards in his deck just couldn't function, namely Bobbity. Always a pleasure to play him. I hope to keep seeing him more in the future. He's a really, really good player. Next up, I want to talk about Jason. He was the second loss I had for the day. He was playing Cell. Game 1 went pretty much how I thought it would. I Cold Bloodlusted the Cell with the Cell engine, and pretty much just took over the game from there. Game 2, he actually sided out the entire Cell engine into some very strange hand control variant, and narrowly squeaked out the win. Game 3 basically came down to me making a risky play. I did a Hail Mary, where I saw he had 2 Kid Trunks in his discard and 2 Sensu Beans. Saw he only had 2 energy up and 5 cards in hand, and I knew I could hit about 85k. He needed to be about 90 to beat me. Turns out his hand actually did have those 2 Kid Trunks, and he managed to secure the Sensu Beans and a Jocko off of the Kid Trunks, and he was able to stabilize it. I basically burnt my whole hand for that play, knowing that if it succeeded, it would win. And around 85 to 90k is very unrealistic for somebody to hit on 2 energy. So, he managed to get it out there. Top decks the Go Tanks next turn, drops it, swings in for a game. So that's all she wrote. That basically ended any run I had. I was basically on the bubble at that point. Next round went up against Dylan, who was playing Soul Striker. Played the match absolutely perfectly. Hit 3 Go Tanks both games. And that's all she wrote. I mean, Soul Striker can just overtake you. So that basically officially eliminated me from the tournament. I ended up somewhere around 40th, I think. Not my best showing, but I did my best there. So even though I was out of it, my favorite match of the game, of the entire day, though, was against this a younger guy named Guan. He immediately recognized me from YouTube, which I was, again, I'm astounded that people know who I am. I don't know if that's like, it's just still sort of very surreal feeling to me. So we had pretty much a nice, more relaxed game, knowing that there wasn't too much of stakes. He played Zamasu. His Zamasu deck was a little bit different than some of the ones I've normally seen. He didn't really play the 10-drop at all. His deck was very much more controlling and relying on the 6-drop Zamasu. He won game 1. I sided in to peel off and Android 16s and actually showed him that there's ways to deal with Indestructible. Game 3 came down to, we had to rush it a bit, and it was kind of unfortunate. But it basically went to time. I think it was the only match I had that went to time the entire day. And he kind of rushed through the extra turns when there was no real reason to, and it kind of cost him the game. But, still really, really awesome player, very friendly. I don't know how old he is, but he definitely seems like he's on the younger side, and I feel like if he keeps practicing, he's going to be a serious threat in a year or two in whatever card game he plays. So I hope he continues doing what he's doing. So now that we know what the results of the Saturday's events are, just a couple of general comments on what the top. Cell is very strong. We already knew that the cell leader was going to be very strong. The cell package is very strong. Tricolor Ginyu, his only real way to deal with that is ramping into 4-drop Gohan, which is one of the reasons why I had objection in the board. As well as hitting Cold Bloodlust, obviously. That's one way to do it. And then Peel Off, which is, again, another way to deal with it because you can negate Union Absorb. There's ways to deal with it. I don't think it's broken. Everybody's like, oh, it won 2 major events at this point. The first one was when the format was largely new. The second one, I'm not discrediting South Florida or any of its players because I know Team Shadow and a lot of the Florida players from Naruto were very strong. You know, their builds are never flashy. They're not like super impressive, but they're very consistent, and I know that the players down there are very, very strong. You know, just kudos to them. If I have to make 2 comments, though 2 observations. One, I feel like a lot of the Ginyu players cannibalize themselves. Most of the Ginyu players that I know, the ones that were running Tricolor Ginyu, we either all went to time or had a round 1 loss against the mirror. So what ended up happening was all of the Vegeta and the Cell players ended up playing the Vegeta and the Cell players. All the Ginyu players basically eliminated themselves. I got to talk to Nick Brady, who I'll talk to about more in a second. He was saying basically he didn't play Ginyu at all the entire way up the bracket because every Ginyu player he knew ended up playing another Ginyu player and eliminating themselves. So it's just kind of weird how it worked out that way. I wouldn't discount Ginyu. I keep seeing people saying Ginyu is dead. I still think Ginyu is one of the top decks in the entire game. So yeah, moving on from that, we'll talk about Sunday's event, which was the 1K Circuit Series. I fared much better there. That event was, I think, 70, 75. I don't know exactly how many people it was. Obviously not as large as the 230, 240 they had Saturday, but it was still a decently sized tournament. Since this was best of 1, I made some adjustments to my deck, made it a lot faster. The previous day's version was much slower, and because obviously it's best of 1 format. I felt like this one was a little bit more indicative going into the top cut of what the format was, which ended up being 3 cells, 3 Ginyus, 1 Goku, 1 Vegeta. Talking about some of the matches from that day, my only 2 losses in Swiss were to my teammate Joe Olheiser, who was playing our dual attack Goku build with some of his added tech. It is the Yellow Slayer, as I call it. It's basically like lights out. If you're playing yellow against that deck, you're pretty much, it's lights out. To back up, and part of the reason for that is because of his tech card, which I won't give away, but it is another reason. I'll go back to what I was saying about the South Florida players. There was, if you guys didn't catch it on stream, there is a trick to the deck, and it's kind of like, I like to, you know, liken it to an old samurai movie where it's like somebody has some kind of sword technique or trick that you're not aware of, and once you see it for the first time, it's already too late. You're dead. That's basically why the South Florida players kind of overwhelmed some of the people, I feel like, in bracket, because you weren't game 1 you understood what was going on, but if they were up game 1, they sided into this little hidden tech, and they basically eliminated you when you were least expecting it. And by then, you can't even make the adjustment because you've already lost the match. And the dual attack Goku deck that Joe pilots is very much the same exact thing. It has a kind of a trick to it, and it works incredibly well in best of 1 because, again, by the time you see it, you're already dead. So that's just my little piece on that. So I feel like once people are aware of it, it won't happen as much, and you might not see, you know, people will make the adjustments, and Cell might not be as strong as he is in this event. Other loss was to Nick Brady, who I mentioned earlier. Guys, if you don't know who Nick Brady is a teammate of Jordan Markle's. I don't know, I don't feel like saying Jordan Markle's mentor is the correct thing, but in Naruto, Nick Brady was basically the hidden boss of the entire game. He rarely traveled outside of the PA area, but he was largely considered one of the best players in the game despite not really going anywhere besides the PA or South Jersey area. He's very, very smart, and in my match with him, it was the first time, this is the first or second time I've gotten to play him in any game. He actually taught me a lot, even though the game was over in turn 5. The game was actually pretty close. My version of Tricolor Ginyu, like I said, is a lot faster than some of the other ones I see, largely because I play things like the 3-drop Frieza, that's 4 of, and a couple of more aggressive bodies that allow me to kind of compete even in the early game, because I'm well aware that Tricolor Ginyu is very slow, the standard build, and it succumbs pretty easily to a lot of aggression. So yeah, those are my 2 losses. Despite all that, still managed to squeak into top 8, get my second Nationals invite. I don't know if having 2 means anything. I don't think I get seeded any higher because I basically finished with the same kind of performance. I still don't think I'm a good player. I still think I'm more of a deck builder and a designer than a player, but it is what it is. I mean, I did pretty well there. In top 8, I played against, again, my teammate Joe. Game 1 I won, or he won, I believe. Game 2 came down to 7-drop Gohan. Came down, basically smashed him. I still think I have 100% win rate with that card at this point. Every time you drop him, it's just brutal. He's just absolutely brutal. Game 3, he dropped this Zeno on me, and like an idiot, rather than I basically resolved the card incorrectly. It says you shuffle your hand and field into your deck. I shuffled hand, field, and discard pile into the deck, and even though he was my friend and he wasn't going to call me on that, it's basically an irreversible board state, so I basically just raised my hand and just said, you know what, yeah, you got it. There's no way I can possibly fix that. There's no way I can possibly recall all 14 or 15 cards in my discard pile. So was very happy though with Joe's performance. He got top 2 split with Ian Hill. I don't know if he possibly could have won it against Ian. Ian's a very strong player, although I think that Joe's deck is heavily favored in that matchup because, as I said, it's basically the yellow killer. Just some other thoughts and shoutouts though on the event. Got to meet Dusty. You guys only saw it from the stream perspective, but Dusty's setup is very impressive. The featured match was basically a good like 150 to 200 feet from the casting desk that he was at. There's some wires being ran through some back rooms and stuff. It was really cool. Very professional setup that he had there with a lot more stuff than I would have guessed went into the casting. So kudos to him. He's a really cool guy, really down to earth, really nice. He and I feel like have a lot in common. We both do stuff in IT as well. I would at some point like to do some kind of casting or streaming with him. I think it would be a lot of fun. So if he's ever down, just give me shoot me a message. I'd definitely be open to it. Probably the most important meeting of the day was I got to meet with the designers from Bandai Japan. As you guys know, I used to be a designer and tester for Naruto Shippuden for the Bandai NA side of the company. To give you guys some history, Naruto was a card game that was developed by Bandai JP, was brought here, was pretty successful here. When Shippuden came out, which is the time skip version of Naruto, it's like the second series, Bandai Japan dropped the game in favor of making Shippuden its own new card game. The NA players obviously were not happy with that. They basically revolted and said, hey, why should I buy sets 9, 10, and 11 when I know that the game is dead after set 11? It's going to be a brand new game. My money is worthless. Bandai NA's decision was basically to keep the game going and make it, just basically merge Shippuden into the current game, and it would be run under Bandai NA. So at that point, even though they're the same company, it's basically 2 separate divisions. I explained to them, who I was, and they were happy to see everybody at the event. They basically said that the event exceeded their wildest expectations, and they had never imagined that the game would get this big so quickly. So they're going to work very hard to make a lot of adjustments for the game for you guys. So just be patient and look forward to what's coming out. A little bit later on in the day, they ran into me again, and I was talking to Ken. I believe it was Ken. He was their translator, and he was asking me about the issues with the game and how I felt about the overall speed of the game and things like that. Me personally, as somebody who likes to play a little bit, the slower control metas, I felt that the game. I told him I felt the game was maybe 1 turn too fast right now because 7 drops are nearly impossible to play. I feel like in certain matchups, there's not enough ways to slow it down a little bit, especially with cards like Reliable Captain, Captain Ginyu. It makes the game quite quick. Cell obviously can, with the Cell package, can make the game end very quickly as well on turn 3 or 4. I know Anthony Hernandez voiced some opinions on the Cell package and said it might be a little bit too consistent and hard for certain decks to deal with, and that kind of limits creativity in deck building. I did agree with that, so that is a concern that they have heard, that Cell, both the leader and the Cell package, might be a little bit too consistent, and they might be looking to have some more answers. The biggest thing I imparted on them was that we needed more reactionary cards. We needed more ways to interact with extra cards, more ways to interact with leaders, and more ways to possibly defend yourself, I think, against aggression. I don't want to outright kill aggro. I know that Dusty and a couple other people think aggro is not that good. I disagree. I think aggro is very powerful in this game. It's just that it is incredibly difficult to pilot compared to other games. So the challenge is either to make it a little bit easier to pilot, or I don't know. That was another thing we talked about with the designers, is that the game right now is in a very complicated state. There are a lot of pieces in play, and you don't want doing anything could basically cause it all to collapse. It's it's a delicate balance that you have to do. Very difficult problem to solve. So I can't say I envy the position they're in, but I do look forward to what they're going to do. All you need to know is that some of the player concerns about Cell, about not being able to interact with extra cards, not Cold Bloodlust specifically, things like that, it has been heard. Don't worry about it, guys. So just a couple other shout-outs to wrap up the video, and this might be a little bit long. I want to give a shout out to Anthony Verrilli for letting me crash at his house, and for obviously spending the last month and change just completely grinding out decks for this event. I don't think any of that would have been possible without you. Nick and Joe Allheiser, again, for being good friends, just helping me theorycraft, talking to me on the phone, practicing, testing, all that good stuff. And then obviously Nick Botchus, who was the assistant head judge for this event, and he did, I think, a hell of a job. I don't think he got any of the calls wrong. He looked way more exhausted than me. He was on his feet while we were sitting for most of the event. You guys don't know this, but he had to get up a good 2 hours earlier than I did for some of this stuff. He had to be there way earlier to help set up, and long after you guys were gone, he was basically helping clean up and all that other stuff. So, good on him. I'm still also proud of him for winning the state what was it, the release tournament win the last weekend. So again, just really proud of him, everything he's done in this game so far. There's no doubt in my mind that he is definitely going to be invited back to judge for another event. I obviously have to give a shout out to the Nardo family. Miss all of you guys. It is always a pleasure every time I get to see you guys. Going down the list, Jordan Markle. Just forget what the haters are saying. I know a lot of people are saying you're slow playing because you finished 503. Haters are going to hate. You're still one of the best players in the game. You just still barely missed topping even with 503, and obviously you got to keep all those packs from the bounty program. One of the things I do want to say though is seeing Florida win this event, and then obviously Cali, it reminds me of the old Naruto days where there was the big regional divide like West Coast, and then there was Florida. I feel like you and I and a couple others, we need to actually start collaborating and testing more, because I feel like since we all withhold everything from one another, unlike Florida or Cali, it kind of stunts our creativity, and I feel like we are not playing as a region, as not only tri-state but mid-Atlantic and Northeast. I feel like we're not as cohesive. We don't bring out the best in each other as much as we can. So I feel like going forward, I'd like to collaborate with you guys on testing, getting some decks in, deck ideas out there, and just playing games, whether it's over Octagon, Skype, Discord, whatever have you. I think it would be really, really helpful, especially for our region. We definitely need to take back and win either Vegas, Virginia, or North Carolina. It's one of those things that I feel like we have to do. I've always felt that Northeast is a very strong region. We definitely have to put a win up on the board, that's for sure. Zach LaFlame, good seeing you again this weekend, and also Sawyer. Zach, I know that I heard that things are rough for you. I just want to say, like, life's challenging. You just got to keep your chin up and just keep persevering. I've been through more heartache than I can possibly imagine, and I'm still young, so yeah. So that's all I have to say about that. Like, just just keep on keeping on, and it'll go through. It'll get better. Eric and Eon Hill. Absolutely amazing play from both of you guys this weekend. Again, good on you guys for sticking to the Ginyu list. Like, you guys have picked it up very well. I'm actually really surprised at how well you picked this game up. You guys are definitely, I feel like, the most improved players from Naruto. When you guys were playing Naruto, I didn't really, I thought you were cool guys, but you didn't have the performance for me to like really consider you like a top player. But like now I can definitely say like the Hill Twins are definitely up there. They're definitely some of the strongest players in the entire game. So just keep it on, keep it on. I'd actually like to get some games in with you guys, test with you guys, because I feel like that would help elevate my game right now, because that's one of the big things I feel like I'm lacking. I feel like I have the creativity to figure this stuff out, but I definitely feel like I need to just be more sharp about my plays, and I need to think, it needs to be more instinctive, which we'll use that as a transition into Chris. Chris was like I'm always getting in my own head. It's something I've been dealing with my entire life. I know that I get in my head way too much. And if I feel like if I just relaxed a little bit more and just kind of went with the flow, things would go a little bit easier. And I feel like playing against strong opponents would help me feel more at ease more often, rather than being tense and nervous and overthinking about it. Anthony Hernandez, again, same thing with Jordan. Just ignore the haters. I want to ask you, though, how does it feel to be a meme? He was talking about it all week, and he's like 52 guys, like, why does everybody think I'm 52? For those of you guys who didn't know, in Naruto I was the guy who always got 9th place, so I was always the number 9, and everybody always associated number 9. Eternal 9th was my nickname, because I always just barely missed top cut. So I know that feeling of just being made into a number, but like I said, the same thing with Jordan. Just, you got to ignore the haters. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're obviously one of the best players in the game. I know you didn't top. You're a little disappointed, but anybody who's paying attention to the game knows that you're obviously one of the best. So Nick Brady, which I mentioned before, absolutely amazing player. Great to see you again after all these years. Really love their match. Obviously, I would have liked to have won, but the things you told me, I feel like even though it was only 1 or 2 suggestions, it feels like it was like a mountain worth of, like an ocean's worth of information, so to speak. So, you can always keep getting better. You can always keep improving, and I really appreciate the advice. So, thank you. Dave and Salpena, great to see you guys again after all this time. Congrats to David on getting top 16 for this event with his Soul Striker list. Soul Striker, obviously, again, very, very powerful. Saul, I miss you. I'm really sad that Final Fantasy didn't really take off in my region, so I couldn't pick up that game. Final Fantasy is one of my absolute favorite IPs of all time. There's just not a scene for me. I just wish I could have played it. Definitely hope to see you guys playing Dissidia NT, which is a game I'm going to pick up. I might feature it on this channel in late January. So yeah, I encourage you guys, if you guys are interested in that, definitely pick it up, or at least check it out. Dissidia Final Fantasy NT looks like it's going to be a great game. Alex Blandon, team Tom Veazey, Ryan Severin, the old Too Easy guys. I never thought I would say it, but I do miss hanging out with you guys and seeing you guys. Great catching up with you guys. Hope to see you guys in Vegas. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm going to go. Funds might prohibit it. Maybe Virginia. Not really sure yet. We'll see what happens. Just a couple other things, because I know this video is obviously going on a little long. Julian, I feel like you playing Ginyu, like I feel like the aggro deck might have like suited you. I feel like that's your deck, and you should kind of stick with it. It obviously brought you success. I know you said it's your joke deck, but obviously your online persona is not the best, so we'll see. Like my opinion of you is much higher after this weekend. I thought you were, much cooler in person, a little bit more level-headed than the last time where we had that um, big fight in New York over the sensu bean. But hopefully that's behind us all now. We can, basically be friends now at this point. Um, Nikolai from Florida, great match against you, man. I'm really happy that you actually got to the top 8 also at the 1K, even though I beat you in Swiss. Obviously, your team won, the ARG regional, so obviously your whole team is very strong players. You're no slouch yourself. Look forward to seeing what you and your team do in the future. And then lastly, the New Jersey DBS crew, Eddie, Pete, Carlos, Dave, Victor. Great seeing you guys again. Obviously, I'll see you guys in the coming weeks with the draft set. I just hope you guys are ready. So, yeah, that's basically the entire experience in one video. Sorry the shoutouts were really long. Again, big thank you to Bandai JP for coming out to the event. Huge thank you again to Jim and Ultra Reality Games for making such a successful event. Really hoping I can, go out to more of these, and hopefully my performance will just be, will get better, because I feel like I've been in a rut for a really long time in card games. I've always just been on the cusp of topping events, and like now I'm actually sometimes breaking into them. So I feel like I've improved a little bit. Hopefully I can, eventually achieve a coveted win outside of a local or a relatively large like 40 or 50 man event. I would eventually like to, say I won it all for once in my life. So, thank you guys for listening and watching. I'll look forward to talking to you guys and seeing you guys in the next video. Thanks.